everyone, it's Megan here from Meghan Makes Do, and today I'm going to show you how to add an icord edging to your knit piece. So for today's tutorial, I'm using my Gemma blanket, and you can see that my nice icord edging gives us a nice, clean, crisp edge to our finished blanket. It does provide a little bit thicker fabric than the regular knit piece, but it leaves a very nice, clean edge on your work, and it's relatively easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it. So I'm going to use a sample square of my Gemma blanket. So here's just a simple plain stocking knit square, and I'm also going to be using double point needles. I'm using 5.5 millimeter double point needles. These are the same size I use to knit my square with. You can go up or down depending on how wide or thick you want your icord edging to be. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here is my square. I'm going to flip it over so that the wrong side of the piece is facing me. You always want to be working with the wrong side facing you. And as you can see here, I have my cast on row right here. I know exactly where to place my stitches. So I'm going to grab my yarn. We're using black yarn today. And I'm going to go ahead and make a slip knot on my needle, pull that tight. And then I'm going to go ahead and cast on, using the long tail method, 2 more stitches. So I have a total of 3 stitches already on my needle. Okay, so we're going to start with 3. You can do a couple more if you want a thicker edge, but I wanted to keep it relatively thin. So with my working yarn towards the back of my piece, I'm just going to insert my needle into one of the stitches along the edge, making sure I'm going through both loops. And then I'm going to pick up a stitch with my working yarn. So make sure your tail's not in the way. Grab your working yarn and then draw up and pick up a stitch. Oops, I think I yarned over here. Hold on, let me try that again. Okay, so insert your needle into the stitch along the edge of your work and pick up a stitch with your working yarn. There we go. So now I have 4 stitches on my first needle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide those stitches all the way down to the other end of my double point needle, pick up my second needle, and I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches. So I'm going to be pulling my working yarn kind of behind my work to draw up and knit that first stitch. Whoops. It can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of this at first, since you're kind of working in a small little piece along the edge. So knit your first 2 stitches. Then I'm going to knit the last 2 stitches through the back. So I'm inserting my right needle through the back loops of those last 2 stitches. And then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to knit those 2 together. So I'll end up with 3 stitches left on my right needle. So you can see I've attached it now to my blanket, and I'm just going to pick up another stitch. And I'm just going through the next cast on stitch that I have on my piece. And then again, I'm going to slide my stitches all the way down my needle, and then I can repeat the process again. So again, we're just going to knit the first 2 stitches. So knit 1. And 2. And then the last 2 stitches, we're going to knit them together going through the back. And then I'll have 3 stitches on my needle. And again, repeat the process going into the next stitch. Pick up a stitch here. Push my stitches all the way to the end of my needle. And then repeat it over again. And we're just going to do this all the way around. And once I get to the corner here, I'll show you how to work the corners as well. But you're drawing your working yarn kind of across, which helps to create that icord edging. It's pulling those edges together and gives you a nice, super clean looking edge and nice finish to your piece. Okay, And what I did, if you're making the Gemma blanket, like in my example here, I pulled up a stitch in each one of the cast on stitches or bind off stitches on my squares. And then I'll show you when I get around this corner. You'll have to kind of decide for yourself where you want to place those picked up stitches along the side where the rows are. Just make sure that you're doing it evenly so that you have a nice tension. You're not getting any puckers or extra rippling in your edge. So we'll just continue doing this until we get to our corner. Okay. I think I have one more stitch here. Again, you can also use circular needles if you don't have any double point needles on hand. It just can be a little bit trickier sliding it all the way down your cord on your circulars. So I do prefer double point needles for this I-cord edging. Okay, so we've hit our corner. So I'm going to go ahead and draw up a stitch, pull up a stitch through this corner stitch here. And I'm going to repeat that process. So I'm going to knit 2 and then knit 2 together through the back, just as I normally would. Okay, so now instead of going on to the next stitch, I'm going to pick up a stitch, another stitch in that same spot that I did for the first stitch of that corner. And we're going to do that for a total of 3. So there's my second picked up stitch. Again, slide my needle down, and then we'll knit 2. There's 1 and 2, and then knit 2 together in the back. So I've done 2 I-cord stitches in that one spot. I'm going to do my third one right now. So pick up your third stitch here in the corner. There we go. And then again, slide them down and repeat the process again. So in every corner, you're going to do that 3 times. So make sure that you're counting when you're doing that. And then once you've done this one, you can easily just continue going up the next side of your square. And again, this is the side where you need to kind of figure out where you want to place each pickup stitch. Because if you're doing the Gemma blanket, the squares do have more rows than they do stitches. So you'll have to skip a few rows here and there just to make sure that you get it nice and even. And if for some reason it's not working out, or you're getting some puckering or some pulling, you can always take out a few of the I-cord rows and try again. So we'll just continue going around, and then I will show you how we join this together once we're done. Okay, so here you can see we're starting to see a bit more. We're just going to continue to go all the way around, always working 3 stitches into the corner until we get to this other side where we started. And then we can just kind of seam those together. But you can see that we're getting this nice clean edge. This is what your I-cord border will look like. It's a little bit thicker than the actual piece that we're working into, but it does look really great on blankets. And it's a nice, easy method and technique to use when you're doing knitting blankets. Okay, so this is what it will look like when you're all done. It'll look nice and even along both sides, and it looks great from the front and also from the back as well. So I'm going to real quick attach a little bit onto this end so I can show you how I seam them together. Okay, so here I'm got to my very last stitch here. Again, I just added a little bit here so I can show you real quick how it's done. So I'm going to pick up my last stitch here, draw up my loop, slide them over, and again, same as before, I'm just going to knit 2 and then knit 2 together in the back. Okay, so since we're at the end, I'm going to slide these down and I'm just going to bind these off real quick. And I'm binding them off just by knitting 2. So 1, 2, and then pulling that first loop over the second loop. And then I'm going to knit 1 more and then pull that loop over the second one. And then I'll trim off my yarn and pull my loop through. So mine's a little bit loose. And I've seen other people use a couple different methods for this, but what I like to do is I just simply thread my yarn onto my needle. And then I like to kind of go through the front of my piece first. So I just kind of try to line it up the best I can. And then I go through the front part of my work all the way to the back, just to make sure that I'm getting them lined up in the front of my work so my right side looks good. So you can kind of adjust it as you need, and you can do a couple extra stitches here, and then I just kind of go through my right side of my binding and attach it to my left side with just a couple stitches. Usually this will kind of just blend in together. You kind of have to play with it a little bit just to get it how you want and to make sure that it's nice and neat. I've also seen people use the Kitchener stitch to attach their ends together. Whatever method works for you will be fine. It just may take a couple stitches to get it to look nice and neat on the right side for you. Okay, so you can see I've kind of cleaned up my edge here a little bit, and once you're all done, you just go ahead and weave all your ends in, and your work is complete. So that's how you add an I-cord edging to your knit piece. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you want to give the Gemma Blanket a try, I will put links in the description below, and then make sure that you like and subscribe.